Good evening. I'm Ulysses Wilcox, Alumni Ambassador Manager for Walden University. As part of Walden University's mission of advancing positive social change, we're continuing our Talks for Good series, which is designed to inspire action and provide a platform for leaders in education to share their thoughts and ideas. We started our Talks for Good series with a historical perspective on equity in education, which examines structural racism in our society and the underlying issues of equity in our schools. Walden continued its talk series with an important panel discussion on the challenges, benefits, and best practices in integrating a diverse learning curriculum and teacher workforce in K through 12 schools. This evening, our 90-minute panel discussion will focus on the challenges, benefits, and future of online learning in higher education. As you're watching tonight's discussion, please share any questions you have for the panelists by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Please note that this panel event will be archived, so you will have an opportunity to view the presentation again or even share this with a friend or a colleague. If you need additional accommodations to attend this webinar, please contact disability@mail.waldenu.edu. Before we get started, I'd like to review the 4 agreements of courageous conversations as a way of helping to frame the discussions that we will be having this evening. The first agreement we would like for you to consider is that you stay engaged. In other words, we want you to remain emotionally, intellectually, socially, and morally involved as we discuss these topics. The second agreement is to experience discomfort, embrace some of the ideas that may not coincide with your previous held notions. The third agreement is to remember to speak your truth. All voices are important. We want you to be open and authentic and consider what others are saying while also embracing who you are and your experiences. The fourth agreement that we would like for you to consider is to expect and accept non-closure. Hang out in uncertainty and don't rush to quick solutions. The issues that we'll be discussing this evening are complex topics that require ongoing dialogue. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our wonderful moderator, Elizabeth Leiba. She is the co-host for the EdUp Experience podcast and a published writer that has been featured most recently in the New York Times, as well as the Sun Centennial and the Seminole Tribune newspapers of Florida. She also previously served as editor for the Seminole Tribune for several years. Over the past decade, Ms. Leiba has worked as an English professor for both face-to-face and online classes for various public and private colleges and universities. Most recently, she worked as an instructional designer for City College, where she develops and deploys online classes for almost 1,000 students across 7 campuses in Florida. Please welcome Elizabeth Leiba.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Mr. Wilcox. I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. And our topic tonight couldn't be any more timely. With the COVID-19 pandemic rapidly changing the way students are learning, we really want to talk about and explore these issues, right? And online education isn't new, but it has been thrust to the forefront in 2020, as many universities and colleges ventured into online learning for the very first time, or they greatly expanded their offerings in the interest of keeping their communities safe. Tonight, we have a prestigious group of panelists with us who will be discussing the challenges, benefits, and future of online learning in higher education. Our first panelist is Dr. Irma Becerra, heart emoji face. Dr. Becerra is the 7th president of Marymount University. Dr. Becerra is a nationally recognized educator known for innovation, entrepreneurship, and transformational education. She has launched Marymount's new strategic plan, added market-driven academic programs, and improved the university's IT and physical infrastructure. Prior to Marymount, she served as provost and chief academic officer at St. Thomas University, right here in South Florida, in my neck of the woods. And she spent 3 decades at Florida International University in such positions as vice president, vice provost, entrepreneurship center director, and tenured professor. She is a boss. She also became the first woman to earn a PhD in electrical engineering at FIU. Our second panelist is another favorite of mine, Dr. M. Christopher Brown II. As the 18th president of Kentucky State University, Dr. Brown is a respected academic leader, a motivational communicator, and a change agent with 30 years of experience in higher education and organizational management. He previously served as president of Alcorn State University, and he's the former executive vice president and provost of Fisk University and the Southern University System, HBCU veteran here. He also served in leadership roles at United Negro College Fund and American Educational Research Association and the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education. Dr. Brown is also the recipient of the 2013 HBCU Male President of the Year Award. And last but not least at all, our final panelist is Dr. Ward Ulmer. As president of Walden University, Dr. Ulmer brings nearly 25 years of higher education leadership to the role, including at Walden, where he served as Chief Learning Officer and Vice President of College Administration. Prior to joining Walden, Dr. Ulmer held leadership positions at Latimer Education and Strayer University. He also volunteers his time serving on the Accrediting Commission of Career Schools and Colleges team. Throughout his career, Dr. Ulmer has championed access to higher education, working with historically Black colleges and universities, technical and community colleges, and institutions that focus on working professionals. So thank you to all of our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us for this important conversation. So let's jump right into it. And to help give our audience a little background on each of the panelists' universities, can each of you, starting with Dr. Becerra, can each of you explain how your university approaches online education?
Thank you, Liz. For those of you that don't know Marymount yet, Marymount University is a Catholic university with its main campus in Arlington, Virginia, just about 5 to 6 miles from the center of Washington, D.C. We offer students bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in a wide range of disciplines. And Marymount's signature is a practical education underpinned by the liberal arts. And most of our programs are those that serve in-demand fields, such like cybersecurity, nursing, therapy, business, forensic and legal psychology, and more. So we say that our programs are practical, underpinned by the liberal arts. We have about 3,300 students that represent 45 states and 78 different countries. And we've been recognized as having one of the most internationally diverse student bodies in the nation. We are currently celebrating our 70th anniversary, and we have our sights going forward on becoming nationally recognized for innovation and commitment to student success, alumni achievement, and faculty and staff excellence. Our strategic plan that you mentioned, Liz, is focused on 4 strategic imperatives: our distinctive identity, transformative student experiences, we're part of a vibrant community, and a sustainable future. And we have many measures of success that define when we're there in our strategic plan, including doubling our enrollment and achieving high impact practices, as well as Carnegie Community Engagement and Research 2, which is High Research Activity Designation by Carnegie. Now, I wanted to tell you a little bit that before COVID-19 hit, Marymount was already in the process of rolling out several new fully online programs. And they included a new doctorate in education and both master's and doctorate in nursing offered online. And then we have, of course, plans to grow our portfolio of fully online programs. I just want to say that we have been discussing fully online programs for many years, even before I arrived at Marymount. But it was not until this year that these discussions that span many years actually became reality with our launching of these 3 new fully online degrees. But when COVID hit back in March, we were forced to move approximately 700 courses that were face-to-face to remote education. Frankly, if anyone would have asked me if this was possible, I would have probably said, no way. But it was the sheer will of our faculty that made this happen. Was it perfect? No. Well, we managed to graduate about 1,000 students in our main commencement, many of whom, like for example, our nursing students, went from the classroom to serving the needs of COVID patients in area hospitals. So I'm very proud of what we have been able to do. I think is something that it's unheard of. And like I said, we continue to improve because while we did what we needed to do to serve the needs of our students in face of COVID, it is a process of continuous improvement, and we certainly want to continue to do better in case in the future we face events like the one that we faced this spring.
Awesome. Great point, because we're all learning that this is something we have to have our contingency planning in place, right? Dr. Brown, what about you? What were some of the insights and some of the things that you learned, or how were you already approaching online, and how did you pivot as we encountered all these unforeseen circumstances?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Liz, and certainly thank you to Walden for having me, and to its esteemed president, who I've known for a number of years, Dr. Ulmer. I'd like to say the Kentucky State is uniquely positioned because we are a public, comprehensive, historically Black land-grant institution in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And our focus is on providing quality teaching with a foundation in liberal studies, scholarly research, and public service. We've been on this hill since 1886, and we provide a number of majors ranging from agriculture through the advanced sciences and professions, from the baccalaureate, actually the associate, all the way up to the doctoral level. But what's important is that the institution was founded and committed to the notion of access, particularly for marginalized and at-risk populations at risk of limited access to technology, resources, or gainful employment. So the issue of online has been existing for quite some time. Certainly there are legendary markers in the industry like Walden, but for the traditional campus, we have tried to provide access where available, particularly at the baccalaureate level, and especially with our Doctor of Nursing practice. Our DNP program is 100% online. So nurses around the nation have access to that DNP program. We used online primarily as a supplement to access, and we joined it to something that we call Credit for Life, where individuals who've been in the world of work can receive course credit for their lived experiences in specific content areas. As my colleague, Dr. Becerra said, COVID-19 brought a massification of the online delivery option. And so where we were only delivering online in 5 or 6 areas, everything went to online. And I think it's an important lesson. Certainly campuses like Walden have been doing this for a long time, and other campuses have been reticent to enter this market space with some critique. But what has been very clear is that they've been on the forefront, and now we're all playing catch up. And so I'm delighted to be a part of this, not just to share what we're doing, but also to learn from my colleagues ways that we can improve our practice going forward.
For sure. And that's what it's all about, right? Collaborating, learning from each other. Let's talk about it. The granddaddy, one of the granddaddies of them all, Walden University. I know I've been watching you guys keenly for the decade that I've been working in online, and you guys have definitely been a forerunner even before that time. So Dr. Ulmer, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your insights in online learning and how your university has approached it and some of the maybe strategies and advice that you might be able to provide.
Thank you, Liz, and thanks for being here with us tonight. I also want to thank you for your very kind words about Walden University, and I'm glad to have Dr. Becerra and Dr. Brown here with me tonight. I'm looking forward to our conversation. When you talk about these institutions that are represented here, there's a great deal of commonality already. And when you talk about online education at Walden University and our approach to that, online is what we do, and that's all we do. Walden has 50 years of experience. We started in 1970 with distance education. We've evolved into online learning. We've also been very successful in a lot of different fields. And regarding our approach, all of our processes here at Walden are about continuous improvement. And so we're constantly testing and investing to increase the quality of the student learning experience. And as Dr. Becerra and Dr. Brown were so very kind to talk about Walden and the things that we've done, we are proud of that, but we're also hoping to continue to be on the cutting edge of that. And as we do that, we want to increase that quality. We want to emphasize the streamlining of the processes for faculty, for staff, for students. And I guess to put it in more concise terms, it's a student-centered approach. It's actually the first thought that our founders, Rita and Bernie Turner, had back in 1970 when Walden University came into existence. They put the student first, and that was a big deal back then. In the 1970s, no one, and I mean no one, was doing that. It was a traditional didactic classroom, and the professor was in charge, and he or she spoke about whoever or whatever they wanted to discuss that day. And so our philosophy of this student-centered approach and the student-centered focus has worked very well for us for quite some time, and we continue to make it our central focus here today.
Wonderful. Student-centered, that's what it's all about. And especially now with all of these unforeseen circumstances, let's talk a little bit about how the landscape of higher education, particularly online, has changed over the past few months. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, in 2018, there were more than 6.9 million students, or over 35% of students in the nation, enrolled in distance education at degree-granting post-secondary institutions. And with COVID-19 accelerating the adoption of online learning in higher education, how important is it for universities and colleges to create or expand options for online learning, both now and in the future? What were your thoughts about that, Dr. Becerra? How have you seen the way that you've handled online pivot and be more agile in the wake of COVID-19?
Yes, thank you, Liz. And I think it's interesting, and I want to underscore what Dr. Ulmer and also Dr. Christopher mentioned before about how our institutions that seem seemingly different, we have a lot in common. The one aspect that we have in common is that we're all student-centered. Marymount University this year became a Hispanic serving institution. And while we are private, we are what is called an affordable private institution. And we are obsessed with student success and on-time graduation. So here we are, the three of us, seemingly different, so similar in our student-centeredness. As we think about what we've been through this year, and it's been a year, I call it a year for the history books, right? And I think one day, I don't know, I don't have grandchildren yet, but I know that one day when I'm a grandmama, my grandkids will say, hey, abuela, how was it like 2020, right? Because It's been such a remarkable year. We have all been pushed to the limits of what we never thought we would have to face. But we have to think that there is a probability that this may not be the only pandemic that we will face in our lifetime. So there may be other pandemics in the future. So how do we use this kind of learning moment, right, what we've been through, to be better prepared for the future, to be what is called a pandemic resilient organization? So in order to be pandemic resilient, we will need to be better prepared. In particular, I think, Dr. Ulmer, you have a lot of experience, 50 years of experience with online, but universities like Marymount, we will need to be better prepared for remote delivery of education, because there may be environmental conditions that will demand it in the future again. So with that, what I'm saying, it's not one and done. Once we get the vaccine, hoping that happens soon, we will need to be able to be ready for future events that will demand this type of pivoting. And, I have to say that higher ed is not particularly known for being able to pivot and being nimble. So we are all taking a page from entrepreneurial organizations that are used to being able to respond to environmental challenges and understanding that we will need to be able to do that in the future again. So in a big lesson for us, like I mentioned before, is we never thought that we would be able to move these 700 courses that we were teaching largely in a face-to-face format to remote education. So I think it also has given us the confidence that as an organization, we can do whatever we need to do. But of course, this is a continuous improvement process, and we'll need to get better at what we're doing so that we really continue on our path for student-centeredness, no matter the mode of delivery.
Absolutely, for sure. Student-centeredness, I think we keep coming back to that, and that's definitely the goal, whether we're face-to-face or online. I know Dr. Brown is a big believer in the idea of student-centered education from his vantage point on the Hill. Dr. Brown, tell us, what are your thoughts about expanding online options, and how have your faculty, staff, your administrative responsibilities changed, or how has your campus as a whole pivoted and adjusted to expanding online for students?
Awesome. Thank you. The moment is momentous, just as President Becerra said. The reality is, just like the NCS data, when approximately 35% of the nation's students were able to access post-secondary education online, now 100% of the nation's collegiates are able to access post-secondary education online. Certainly in colleges and universities, particularly four-year residential colleges, and then if you add liberal arts, mission, and focus colleges to that, we turn just about the speed of the Titanic. It's usually a very slow, thoughtful, deliberate, delayed set of decisions by faculty consensus committee and review. But the faculty at Kentucky State took the ball very quickly, and within less than a week, transmitted and were able to revise all of our course deliveries, which were traditionally face-to-face, into online delivery options. This is highlighted, and most people who know me know I'm big on brand management and brand identity. This is highlighted for me and given me new ammunition in my conversation that there really is very limited difference in academic content delivery around the nation. If a student is majoring in English at Marymount or Kentucky State or at Walden, they're going to study Shakespeare. If they're majoring in psychology at either of our three campuses, they're going to study Freud. If they're doing sociology, it's going to be Durkheim. And so the question is, what is the brand difference between the campuses, and what is the value add to that academic experience? The second piece that is laying silent in this conversation is that while we have been able to transmit the content by and large, with some exceptions, we continue to struggle in science where labs are required, or performance-based majors like music. But the reality is there's still some significant conversations that I hope we'll have today and that the industry needs to have as it relates to providing student services and support in the online space. So I think the first question of the shift, as you relayed the language, to online learning, I think we can do that shift to online learning for the content and for the content delivery. But I think there's some secondary questions around library access, creating cultures and communities of support and collaboration that will be required in the world of work. That must also be a part of this conversation of online preparedness and access, not just for the pandemic, but as a way of life. That's a way of life.
That's a very good point, and it's so salient. I'm so glad you brought that up, Dr. Brown. Let's ask Dr. Ulmer, because we know that Walden, like you said, since the 70s has been one of the forerunners in online learning. And as Dr. Brown astutely pointed out, that the content isn't necessarily delivery. You know, we can kind of go back and forth in terms of remote versus hybrid versus high flex versus online. There's all these different methodologies, but content by and large, for the most part, is going to be the same, whether you're taking a class face-to-face on campus as opposed to an online class. But a lot of, I think, some of the criticism and some of the concern has been more focused on what Dr. Brown mentioned, which is how do we provide support mechanisms? What do we do to ensure that if there are concerns that students have about the online delivery method, that we're able to address those? You guys have been doing this, and you guys have been doing it extremely well. What insight could you share with us, Dr. Ulmer, about how those concerns that students might have could be addressed, and what we can do in this post-COVID-19 environment to make sure that we are being responsive to students' concerns with online learning primarily being the way that they're taking classes, at least for the foreseeable future?
Thanks, Liz. I appreciate that. I think what you're hearing is that all of these institutions are making they're transitioning, and so and for anyone who thinks that now that that these students who have been traditional students and want to, they've now had a taste of online. And so I think any traditional institution at least is going to have at least have some level or some online program going forward, so that students have these options here, because some of them are going to get very used to that and choose to do that. And the first thought, when you talk about expanding options and looking at the content, the first thought when looking to build or expand anything is demand. And as you asked or said in your question, the demand is there. And a large portion of these nearly 7 million students are adult learners. And that's where Walden has found a niche market. We're building not only new programs, but we're also building new delivery modes for our programs. And one of the biggest drivers that we've seen, especially around content, have been how employers want their staff to increase their skill set, but they want their staff to stay employed with them and stay at work. And many students are able to do that now in an online environment when they couldn't do it before. Another approach here is that many students enter programs or fields to go get an academic degree, but they've been working in that field for a long time. And so tempo learning, that's Walden's competency-based education. That's another mode of delivery that allows these with work experience to apply their existing knowledge and gain new skill sets. And as another delivery mode, it's yet another avenue to expand access to online education and to those working adults that we're hearing so much about now.
Definitely. What are some of the concerns that those working adults have? I've worked at many institutions that serve the working adult learner, and the needs and the support mechanisms that need to be in place for the adult learner tend to be a lot different than what we might see from a traditional 18 to 24-year-old student. So you talked a lot in just a brief moment about different types of programs that might be available, as well as different types of delivery methods that are needed in order to meet the needs of that different and growing demographic of student that are out there. What are some of the primary concerns that you've heard, Dr. Ulmer, from students that are working adult students, or students that are trying to navigate this COVID-19 shift with job and with kids maybe being out of school, or with trying to juggle maybe a different schedule? What are some of the concerns that they have and challenges that they've had in maintaining their goal to complete school? And how have you perhaps been able to pivot in terms of what you're doing, or enhance what you're doing well to help to support these students?
So that question is going to be different from me than it will be for the other panelists, because remember, my students, Walden students, chose online. They didn't go to a campus and then have to change to an online program. Absolutely. So they chose online, and what an online student is concerned about is the quality of the program and how it's going to affect their employment prospects. And so that's why it's so important that we have our business development team, or our strategic alliance team out there working to gather all of these folks and to have that knowledge spread. And then what I also want to talk about is that one of the biggest concerns that a student has when they come back, especially a student who's had a false start, and by the way, I had a false start in my undergrad, and so I'm one of these students, but individuals who've been out in the workforce for quite some time and are now coming back, one of the biggest concerns is usually technology. And how am I going to go to class? What am I going to do in the classroom? And how am I going to know how to upload my assignments? And so what we try to do, we actually have a chief innovation officer who is his main job is to go and to make things easy and intuitive and increase skill sets. And so I think it really comes down to asking about the things that are taking place in the classroom when it's taking the stress off the student, if you will, about how to learn and how to post in the classroom and allow them to concentrate on the content.
So making it more stress-free, making sure that all those technical issues and maybe elements of online that the students might not be familiar with, that those are taken care of, so the student can just focus on being sure that they're getting their assignments in on time and that they're being effective in pursuing their degree program. So that sounds definitely like some great advice and a recommendation that our other panelists can follow as well if they're not already doing so. Dr. Becerra, what are some of the, because Marymount students, and I'm sure Dr. Brown's experience probably is the same for his students, that type of student tends to be a more of a traditional student. What are some of the concerns that your students have expressed, and what have you and your team done in order to assist students with concerns with online, accessing online, maybe balancing schedule? Is there anything particular that has stood out in terms of things that your students have expressed on campus or being off campus and trying to access their courses?
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Yeah, I think that, like Dr. Ulmer said it, we are probably almost at the other end of the spectrum in terms of the students that select Marymount. They pick Marymount because they want to have that personal experience. We have very small classes. Our student to faculty ratio is 12:1. So even though we have embarked in online programmatic offerings primarily for adult learners at the graduate level or degree changers, the majority of our 18 to 22, which is 75% of our student body right now, when we surveyed them late in spring, they said, "Thank you. We know that you're trying to keep us safe, but this did not work for me." And I'm telling you that what we did was not really what you would characterize as online learning, but more remote education, in the sense that students were learning from the professors in small environments, much like what we're doing today. So we were still trying to preserve the same student to faculty ratio, even though we were doing it at a distance. So we found that what was missing, I think it's clear that the content delivery is something that you can do over the internet quite easily. But what is missing is providing students the opportunity to learn from each other, just like what we have in a physical environment, where many students find that it's easier for them to absorb what the professor is saying, to get together in collaborative exercises, benefit from on-campus activities that help them cement what they're learning in the classroom, including service learning activities. So these type of, we call it ancillary activities or wraparound services, is what we found it difficult to provide the equivalent of that in the kind of virtual environment. In addition, we also had students that they didn't have the technology or Wi-Fi access. So when we were forced to move to remote education, some students would not go home because they lived in areas in Virginia that are rural areas where Wi-Fi was spotty. So we found ourselves providing students with laptops and telecommunication cards so that they could continue their work remotely, because they were just not even prepared from the technology perspective. Or did they have the technology infrastructure to do that from home? Which is really interesting because it points to the digital divide that exists still today in some of the rural areas in our states. Students also mentioned the distraction. I mean, we know that there is a lot of siblings there, and parents were working also from home. So it was hard for them to just have the experience where they just completely focus on what's going on in their studies. And there were a lot of distractions, even on the internet. So what we did is we tried to provide this same kind of level of the support services. Provide remotely their access to their advisors, tutoring services, even access to our clinic, because a lot of students expressed feelings of isolation when they were working from home. So that's why we decided to come back to campus in the fall with a hybrid flexible format to provide students the maximum flexibility, and so that they could decide if they wanted to learn remotely, they could continue to learn remotely. But about 80% of the students, they opted for coming back on campus. We also are experimenting with something that is giving students flexibility, in particular at the graduate level, with stackable certificates. Stackable certificates allow students to build their own masters, if I may, by putting together different graduate certificates that are really adequate to whatever their interests are as they continue their education as adults. So for example, you can stack a certificate in cybersecurity, cloud computing, entrepreneurship, or project management. So any of these three 12 credit certificates into this master's in emerging technologies. And students can decide when they start, when they stop. So it's not the prescribed 36 credits. You got to finish them within 2 years, but you can start, stop. So this flexibility, not only in mode of delivery, but start, stop ramps, and also flexibility in building your own, if I may say, masters based on your interests and your career preferences. So it's clear that flexibility is the key. So providing students the flexibility to not only mode of delivery, but start, stop, build their own masters as they need, and continue learning, because we're understanding that adults will need to continue learning. It's not something, it's a one and done, right? As you continue your progression in your careers, you will need to continue learning because technology changes so fast, and we know that their careers 5 years, there'll be careers that don't exist today. So preparing students for the careers of the future, students will continue to learn, and we'll have to be ready to provide the flexibility for them to do so.
Interesting. So much to unpack there. You talked about the lifelong learning mindset, which here, you know, with my podcast at the EdUp Experience, we talk about that constantly, lifelong learning, and what we can do to make sure in higher education we facilitate that, and we're more responsive and creative for finding ways for students to take advantage of that. So I love that you talked about that. You also point to a couple of different aspects and maybe some different elements that we hadn't really predicted, and maybe Dr. Brown can weigh in on this as far as accessibility, as far as the digital divide. I don't think a lot of people, I think there is overwhelmingly, we think that everyone has access to the internet, everyone's on their phones all the time, and we don't necessarily always understand that there are students that live in rural areas, there are students that live in urban areas that may not be able to afford, if they're not on campus, afford access to the internet, and that may preclude them being able to have access to online learning. So there's a lot of different concerns that perhaps we didn't necessarily think about. Dr. Brown, what was your experience? Did you see that students were coming from rural areas that they didn't have access to internet, or what were some of the prevailing concerns that came up on your campus?
And certainly I think that's a nationwide trend, but I'm feeling very fortunate being at the end of this, what I'm calling a tee-up at this moment. It's almost, if the bases are loaded for me in answering this question. And it's because Drs. Ulmer and Becerra have really captured sort of the panoply, what the landscape looks like. But at Kentucky State, we have now focused very clearly on what we call the ABCs necessary to support digital transformation. So we don't really focus on the divide because the divide can be delimiting, but we focus on the transformation. What are the ABCs that we have to do or make sure are in place for all of our learners to be successful? I want to pause parenthetically before I give them to you and say that at a former institution, and now we're on that precipice here, every student was required to take at least one online class, even if they were a traditional four-year residential student. So the pandemic has just pushed us to promote trends that were already best practice. So the ABCs are access. The ABCs to digital transformation are access. We need to make sure that students can access the information that is available online. So as you've heard from the preceding speakers, whether that's online access to Wi-Fi, whether that's computers, whether that's the things that we send our students in the mail, hotspots. So we make sure that there's no delimitation to access. But so many people stop at the access question and will ask a question during this moment. Do you have access to the Wi-Fi? Do you have access or internet? Do you have access to a computer at home? Well, access is only the first step. The second step, which is often not considered, and it's even a challenge in affluent households, and that's bandwidth. So the second challenge for digital transformation is bandwidth. You can have access, but have limited bandwidth. So the reality is many homes have gotten, I'm on a public line, so I don't want to name a vendor, but many homes are now doing streaming television. One is more popular than the other. So they're streaming television and chilling out, as they would say, right? So everyone is watching these mini series. Everyone is watching television and videos and movies on demand. And so the question is not just, do you have access to the internet or Wi-Fi, but what is the available bandwidth in the home or in the place of study for you to manage Canvas, to manage Blackboard, to manage Zoom even, whatever you're using to get the content and coursework done. And so there are some students, particularly those who are majoring in the sciences or computer sciences or graphics and digital design, who may not have sufficient bandwidth to complete their coursework and content assignment. And the last thing that we've been focusing on is consistency. There are meaningful differences in the student populace depending on whether the courses that you have access and bandwidth for are delivered synchronously, which means at the same time with everyone in place, asynchronously, where you're just downloading the modules. And as Dr. Becerra said, depending on the answer, an individual may have home responsibilities or the like, or work responsibilities that are disrupting their ability to pursue their goal. And so at Kentucky State, we've been focusing on what we call the ABCs of digital transformation: access, bandwidth, and consistency. And lastly, there is an underlying piece that I hope we will get to, which has to do with sort of the mixed modes of what we're doing. And that is that we are providing the content, we are providing the skills, the stackable credentials, and we're doing them remotely and in isolation. But many of the global marketplace hirers are saying that what they're looking for is communication skills, collaboration skills, teamwork, ability to work in teams. And so we have to go to the next step in this digital transformation, and to make sure that we are still providing the soft skills that employers need. So even as I'm enjoying this talk for the good tonight, we're all in different places all around the country, but we have figured out how, even remotely, to collaborate. And so I'm really excited about how that's happening, and hoping that this will be a springboard for us to scaffold up to the next level.
That's such a salient point.
Can I add
love
to that?
Of course, absolutely. Jump on in, weigh in for us.
So I think this is a big part of what needs to be addressed when we talk about access. And also, I want to clarify underserved and marginalized. I don't think that's always about race, background, or tax bracket. I think that I include adult learners and full-time employees in there, because a lot of institutions aren't geared toward that. And I'm an example of that. Walden, when I came to Walden as a student, Walden was the best fit for me while working, raising a family, traveling with my job. I just couldn't be on campus. And most other institutions, at least at that point in the early 2000s, had not yet embraced adult learning. So Walden's philosophy of access has been very successful for underserved and marginalized students. In fact, our student body population is over 52% minority. It's over 76% female. And I think that today, as Dr. Brown just so eloquently said, delivering online education requires an institution to tailor its support services specifically. He was talking about getting the access and then what happens. And so for us, it means tailoring that for a working adult's schedule and needs. And it includes things like IT support, comprehensive digital libraries. I don't have a library on campus. It's the student success coaches that work with students and help them through the rough spots. It's the writing center. It's academic advising. All of these are just crucial. And I mentioned technology. So to clarify, I mean providing technology that helps them, right? I mean, not just to say we have some technology out there, but our chat bot is built now for self-service, and a student can say to the chat bot, I don't know how to log into class, or how do I submit my assignment, or can I get my 1099T or 1098T? And so it'll do a lot of those things. we have also done a lot of things at the doctoral level, because a lot of folks think that once you get to the doctoral level, you can handle things on your own. But we have something called the doctoral degree coach, and this is designed specifically to help doctoral students stay on schedule. And I know I'm saying a lot here, but I'll just say, if you'll let me have one more second, Walden is number one in the world for awarding doctorates to African Americans, and that's from National Science Foundation's most recent survey of earned doctorates. But that alone is a direct result of an institution building support services and tailoring something and using those services as a differentiator. It's why I chose Walden as a student, and why I chose Walden as an employee. So I think those are the things that you add on top of what Dr. Brown just talked about, so many things that need to happen. And what does that show us? It's very, very complicated to do what we're all talking about doing here tonight.
Definitely complicated, but like you said, very worthwhile. And there are students that, as you mentioned, Dr. Ulmer, might not necessarily be served because they are working adult students, or they are coming from backgrounds where they haven't necessarily had the opportunities. And with a combined effort of all different kinds of colleges and universities, whether it's Hispanic serving institution, whether it's a HBCU, whether it's an online school that is non-traditional, it takes a village, right, of everybody to combine and join forces like Voltron in order to serve the needs of our students. So Dr. Ulmer, you touched on this. Do you want to drill down a little bit about what are some of the specific support services you feel are the most important to increase retention and graduation for online students? A lot of the time, for myself working in the online sector, you do hear that, hey, the outcomes are just not as good, and the students just get left behind. What have you done differently? You mentioned that stat, which kudos to you guys for being on the forefront of graduating these African American doctoral students. What can other schools learn from that? What did you do that was able to help you to get more outcomes and better outcomes and increase retention and graduation for students that sometimes don't have the best outcomes at other schools?
So I mentioned earlier how we make programmatic decisions, curriculum decisions. I talked about talking to employers and making sure that we are current. But when new students come in, they need to know, and anytime I do a student video or send a communication out to the Walden community, I'm always talking about the support services that are out there. And there are things that happen inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And if you want to talk about inside the classroom, because we are, as Dr. Brown's talking about, we're all over the country tonight. Our students are in the same situation. And so we do things, for instance, in our social work program, we have a virtual reality program that is, it allows them to practice, to be put in the situations with an avatar and to say, okay, this is happening as a social worker, how would you handle that? And so guess what? That's very realistic practice without the liability. And so you get to learn in that environment. In the Richard W. Riley College of Education and Leadership, our programs use an avatar program there as well, because we want a potential teacher or someone who is already a teacher and looking to become a principal or superintendent to know how to manage that classroom environment. And we want them to do that before they meet real students. We want them to do it in a safe place. And so one of the largest benefits, I think, right now about Walden is having these support services that the Writing Center. I mean, I did a graduate degree at Clemson University, and I did one at Walden University, and I'm not sure whether Clemson has a Writing Center or not, but I'm certain that Walden does, and I got every bit of my money's worth out of it as a doctoral student. So I think that there are a lot of things out there, but I want to take it a little bit at a more macro degree, because I think that right now, one of the largest benefits that we're getting is online degree programs at all institutions are preparing students to be in what we are in right now, a COVID-19 business world. In that world, you know what we need? We need people with virtual skills. We need people who can be remote employees and how to conduct a video meeting and how to be self-disciplined. And so when you hear us talking about soft skills, the range of soft skills is now so much larger, because you need to know how to move around technologically when you're sitting in your living room and looking around. I mean, we'd all love to be in the same room. We'd love to be in a conference tonight and talking about this, but we're virtual, and it's a very different environment in the pandemic. And so one of the many things that we're trying to do is to help students know that their support here at Walden and our institution, when they're basically serving as teachers in their home. They may not be a school teacher, but if they have young kids, they're trying to figure out how to teach their kids, how to separate home life, work life, because now work is in the home. And so we worry about all kinds of things. I'm a little nervous now that I might get one of my 4 children to run behind the video screen here. And that happens a great deal. And so we're always in a place where we're trying to figure out what's going on now that can help these students. How do we need to support a student? Because if a student's having difficulty getting access to the internet and finding time to get to their classroom because they are teaching their 2 preschool kids or elementary school kids, that's a very different kind of support than someone who is struggling in their dissertation because they have writer's block.
I want to add just very quickly, Liz, though, that what President Ulmer lays out is critically important, but and maybe President Becerra is going to pick up on this point. We have to make sure that we continue the online conversation, not as an either or, but a both and. So while a Walden may be able to provide those critical levels of skills, upskilling, and business acumen for the digital meetings and the like, there is still a fundamental role for the traditional campus or the residential campus, or we would have no Philharmonic. We would have no Actors Theater, no movies to watch. And even more importantly, in this pandemic, and my faculty have drugged me left and right over this when I was trying to do, and I always confess my mistakes, when I myself tried to make all of the coursework face-to-face, online or hybrid. I had some faculty saying, no, we've got to have these labs. We've got to have science labs. I will gladly videotape myself performing the experiment, but I still need the students to do these labs. And right now, we're expecting the people at Pfizer or any of these other big pharma companies to have people who are skilled, not just in being able to Zoom or to put a green screen in the back, but to be upskilled in the science of pharmaceutical research. Or for those persons who are hospitalized, we want to make sure we have able healthcare professionals and nurses who know how to run IVs and know how to intubate people who are in critical moments of this novel coronavirus pandemic. So once we've dealt with the first piece, as I think President Ulmer has said, we need to also make sure that those campuses that are providing a range and assortment of majors that some campuses, like Walden doesn't do engineering, so our engineering students, that they are still getting good online service. And I love what Dr. Ulmer said about the digital library. Do all students have access to digital resources? And so at Kentucky State, we've been fortunate because we do have digital resources. We also have the chat box. We've also gotten now Inscribe. I don't know if you're familiar with Inscribe. Dr. Becerra, if you all don't have it at Marymount, you definitely want it, where students can go in and access a range of student support services right through that portal. In our career placement office, we've been using Handshake And so even in this pandemic, while students are displaced from the physical campus, we've still been able to place people in internships, still been able to place people in jobs. And so I think there's a lot we learn from what the Waldens of the world have done early on to improve the delivery of service for the range, as we've been discussing them, of marginalized populations, which are not just race and gender, but certainly are race and gender, as well as adult and age populations. And so even as we celebrate what Walden has been able to do in the African-American population, that is because so many other campuses have not made the necessary considerations to do that. There's a wonderful video that's on Twitter. I don't know if it was shown today. I hope it was, of a Walden graduate, Jack Monell, who works at a HBCU in North Carolina. And he's done transformative work, both as a faculty member and a criminal justice activist, because of the skills and training that he was able to get at Walden. And so it's a great portal, but there are still certain areas that other campuses have to pick up. And so I want to make sure that we're doing both and in all of our settings so that we can umbrella every student and make a difference for the nation.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself, Dr. Brown. And you're right. There is a both and. I went to a PWI, I went to a upstate land-grant university, but then I went to online and did non-traditional. So I did community college. I did a little bit of everything. So there's space for every part of this puzzle that we need to put together. Dr. Becerra, did you want to weigh in as far as you're at Marymount? What are some of the retention, graduation concerns that you have come across?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to really kind of underline what my co-panelists have said here, both Dr. Brown and Dr. Ulmer, about success in the virtual world really requires intentionality about what is it that our students need to be successful. And clearly we offer all the wraparound services, the professional advisors, the handshake, everything that has been described, the one-stop shop, the tutoring services. And we had to pivot those services and also offer them in the virtual world as well. But this pandemic has also brought a new set of issues. Just like when we moved our students to single residence halls to minimize the possibilities of contagion, then students felt isolation. And so the solution of virtual education also brings with itself feelings of isolation. It's harder for professors to assess at a distance if the students are connecting or not, because you don't get to see their faces. Or how about absenteeism, which is clear when you are not in the classroom, in the physical environment? How do you measure absenteeism? Because students could be logged in, doesn't necessarily mean that they're connected. And I think all of us have experienced an increase in students feeling anxious in the COVID environment, and more need for us to invest in our counselors, in our clinics. So how do we overcome this? Well, typically students may feel maybe in the doctor program an imposter syndrome or maybe lack of confidence. How do you also equip the students with confidence and not feeling isolated but feel embedded? So I think that every day we've been in this year of I'm going to call it immersive learning that COVID has provided us. We've discovered new areas that require our attention. And the whole opportunity to create connectivity among our students in a virtual world is one that I think that we still need to continue to unpack.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue of what you said there in terms of us just moving forward and looking for ways that we can be intentional and continue to grow our programs and be responsive to our students. What do you see, Dr. Becerra, as the future of online learning in higher education? Both you and Dr. Brown spoke to the idea of higher education and online learning being a supplement, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we're all going to be a Walden. We can't all aspire to such greatness, right? But what do you see as the future for online learning as you see it in your experience?
Well, I think, again, I've had, and we talked about this, Liz, when we did the podcast, I did have my aha moment because I think that the great American university as we know it is still going to exist going forward. And while I do believe in the need for online education, in particular as we serve the non-traditional students, our adult learners, people that have to navigate career, families, all of the above, I also see a huge opportunity for the embedded experience that the traditional American university, the campus experience provides for our students. And what I like about it is that I see a world where we can all exist because there is room for all of us, and it's not one size fits all. And I think that's what really makes our country great, is that we have this fabric of universities that range from the very traditional university like Marymount to a more, a virtual university that really came about because it needed to serve the needs of students that were not being served in the traditional university. And if all of us are focused on student success, on-time graduation, none of this idea that, remember we talked about this when I was an undergraduate at my university. I remember the president welcomed us and said, look to the right, look to the left. You remember, Dr. Brown? Look to the right, look to the left. Only one of you will cross the stage, right? So we sort of said, graduation rate 1/3, right? And we said that that's what was going to happen, and that's what we got. When you look at a national level, that about half of our students that start college end. And this is where this country is struggling. We need to get every student that starts college to graduation. And our job doesn't end until our students graduate. And I think that the past few years, it's only been in the past few years that we've had this reckoning with this thing of look to the right, look to the left. It's nonsense. We have to be committed. Every student that starts college has to graduate. And if you graduate from college, you don't have problems paying your loans. The issue with the debt that we have today is not that students take loans. I took plenty of loans my whole life. I took loans my whole entire education, and I paid them all. And the issue is because I was able to get to graduation, I was able to pay my loans. So I think that this, and then the other thing that it's been clear to me from this pandemic, my other aha moment, is that those of us that have degrees, the college degree has afforded us the opportunity to work remotely. But our fellow that doesn't have the college degree, that have to drive the buses, that are working in the stocking shelves, they are the ones that have been more prone to COVID. So as a country, the conversation about college and we've been having to defend the worthiness of the college degree for the last few years. I think it's enough. It's enough of that rhetoric, and we need to be firm and say that COVID has showed us if you have a college degree, your family was able to continue to be provided for, you continue to have your job, you had your salary. So let's change the rhetoric, because when we say that college is not for everybody, who is it not for? Yeah. Let's change the college. It's access graduating from college. And we have phenomenal institutions, each one unique in its own, each one willing to meet students where they need it. So that's my thing.
Wonderful. Me and you, Dr. Becerra, we're on the same page as parents of children of immigrants. Our parents were immigrants. We definitely really value and really want everyone to understand the importance of a college education. And online learning definitely is a part of that package in one way or another. Did anybody else want to weigh in about in the last couple minutes here? I want to be cognizant of our time and make sure that our audience gets an opportunity as well to ask any questions they might have of our panelists. Were there any final thoughts about the future of online learning?
I think I want to respect the time as well and see if there are any field initiated queries. But certainly second what Dr. Becerra said and celebrate the fact that this moment has brought to higher education as a field of study and a field of practice, and we can be pretty dormant, that there must be a marriage of talent and technology if we are going to deliver educational access. And we can't just give access if we don't undergird it with a student experience, some academic effectiveness and outcomes, and a competitive edge, as I'm sure President Ulmer would say, for the workplace and the global market. We are at a moment of digital transformation that can yield positive outcomes for years to come. 2 or 3 years ago, at my State of the University address, I talked about the Yale Chalkboard crisis of 1812, where the dean of faculty had the audacity to suggest that all faculty should be teaching with chalkboards and writing on chalkboards. And this was at a time when lecture and recitation and writing notes was the rule of the day. And the introduction of the chalkboard led to all-out faculty protests that this would erode the value of teaching and the quality of education. And certainly, just like in 1812 over a chalkboard, which we would now find antiquated, we're having the same sort of rebellion around providing a marriage between talent and technology. But I'm hoping, just like President Becerra and just like our moderator, and I believe my co-panelist, Dr. Ulmer, that the nation will seize this opportunity to say, we can use chalkboards in school. I mean, we can use computers in school, and the world will not end. And I think the parallels are real.
So Liz, I'll be cognizant of time as well, but let me just say that I don't believe the traditional didactic classroom is ever going away. So when we talk about the online learning world and the future, I think we have to just talk about what we've said. Most institutions are going to have to be aware that they need multiple delivery modes. But again, there's always going to be a certain student who wants to sit in a traditional classroom, hear a lecture, and interact in person. So one of the trends that we've been seeing is that people are doing now, or that kind of as Walden's vision is, we want to continue to expand that access. And I think that's what all of higher ed is going to see come out of this, new learning tools, embracing new technology. And that's what we are doing. When you look at our long range plan, our strategic plan, you see that those are the things that we hope are going to help us with our mission of social change, empowering more people to create that social change on the local, the national, and the global levels.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate those final words of wisdom from our esteemed host here. I'm the moderator, and this is like just being in the presence of Walden, being in the presence of Dr. Becerra with Marymount, Kentucky State University with Dr. Brown. This has been amazing just to hear all of this insight. So I'm so very happy that you were able to share a lot of your recommendations and thoughts and insights from everything we've all been going through over the past few months, and just kind of serve as futurists a little bit for us for what we can expect in the coming months. At this point, though, I want to go ahead and be cognizant of time and hand it over to Mr. Wilcox to hear if we have any questions from the audience.
Thank you, Ms. Leiba. We've had a really insightful conversation so far with our expert panelists. During the discussion, we've been receiving some thought-provoking questions from our audience. And as a reminder, you still can submit your questions through the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So here's a question from one of our audience members. Other universities in the past have failed in their attempts to integrate online learning at their institutions. What recommendations would you give to institutions thinking about offering or increasing online degree programs?
I'll start if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
So I think that teaching online is not as, institutions have to realize it's not as simple as emailing a syllabus and posting a discussion question. And if you're going to build a program and integrate it into your university, if you're going to get it past your faculty senate, if you're going to get the buy-in, you need to emphasize the quality of the program. And then you also have to do something that's often painful and invest in the resources and the technology to ensure that those learning experiences are getting better. And so that, along with positioning your programs to meet the needs of two groups, not just students, but also the employers, because now we're starting to see a lot of employers do tuition reimbursement and support their employees. And so they need to see that their return on investment in the marketplace is real. And then finally, there are so many players in the space now. And even before COVID, we started to see so many institutions, even the most traditional of institutions who used to look down their noses at online education, they're full steam ahead in the online world. So I think we have to recognize that if you're going to look for that integration.
Yeah, and I can add to that because when I arrived at Marymount, they had been multiple discussions for over many years about launching fully online programs, but somehow they would never get to fruition. So we did have to get the buy-in from some key faculty that are considered innovative faculty. And rather than coming from the top, you want to make sure that you have a group of faculty members that believes that this is something to add to your repertoire of what you're already doing. So it's not one or the other, but it actually allows you to recruit, if I may say, a student a profile that you may not be accessing right now because they are looking for that type of education because they have a number of constraints that they would prefer to learn remotely. Like Dr. Ulmer said, when he was looking for an educational option for him, he had a family, he was working, his job required a lot of traveling. So that's what he was looking for. So I think in our case, I actually just kind of catalyzed the decision that we were going to go fully online. And as I mentioned to you before, we have 3 programs now starting this fall. And then the next question that you need to answer is, can you do it yourself? Or do you need an online program management partner? So for smaller institutions like ourselves, we did go with an OPM. And that's another interesting opportunity because the whole due diligence process of selecting an OPM, if you decide to go that way, is a complex process. You need to find, this is kind of a marriage, and you need to find a partner that shares your values and that shares your culture. So it may take a little bit of time to find that right partner. For us, the right partner was Key Path Education. And we're delighted because we feel that it was really the right partner for us. They understand our culture. We seem to be aligned in many ways. And so far, it's been a very successful partnership. So I think that for universities that have not started online 50 years ago or 20 years ago, it may be hard to just take the plunge on yourself because online marketing has become extremely complex. So I think it's important to evaluate how are you going to do this? Are you likely to be able to do it alone successfully? Do I find a partner? Who would be the ideal partner for us, etc.?
Great. Dr. Brown, would you like to weigh in on that question?
I think they've both done an exceptional job, and certainly want to hear more field-initiated queries from our viewers.
All right. So here's the next question. One of the biggest barriers to online learning at universities and colleges is getting the academic leadership and faculty to buy in. So what recommendations do you have for addressing this barrier?
I'll definitely jump on that. That has been our saving grace here at Kentucky State, and that is that we have free, regular, open communication with our faculty. Faculty, despite all of the naysaying that's given to them, they're actually some of the smartest people in the world. They rank in the top 5% of the population, and oftentimes we just don't communicate our thoughts and ideas. So what I do is, one, we had regular open communication. Generally, there's standing conversations with faculty, Senate faculty leadership. I'm also a Twitter president, and so individuals can message me, students, anyone can DM me 24 hours a day, sadly, 24 hours a day.
So what you're saying, Dr. Brown, is that students can slide in your DMs and you don't have a problem with that?
They don't slide in, but they post. They definitely post. And it's insightful because you get to catch things. And even, I shouldn't tell this, even during this pandemic season, students have been my #1 police force, posting to me Instagram shots of people who are planning off-campus social hours or kickbacks or whatever that we've been able to break up before they happen to keep everyone safe. So yeah, I'm open access for them to come. But the other thing that I added this year is a series of town halls and virtual coffee chats. As a matter of fact, tomorrow is another virtual coffee chat. There's no agenda. Only requirement is that you bring a beverage and that you log in the Zoom, and we talk about whatever anyone wants to talk about, and I give free, honest, and direct answers. No political speak, no confusion. And so faculty and staff are on the cusp of what we're doing in the online transformation, what we're doing right now with the pandemic. And so I think, to the extent that campus leaders, I don't want to put it on the president, maybe it's the provost on a different campus, keeps an open line of communication. If the faculty are aware, they will come along with the change and transformation. I think sometimes in the corporate or the cabinet meeting room, there's an assumption that the faculty don't want to do it, they won't do it, they won't come along. And we never invite them as partners. We only communicate to them sort of mandates and edicts. And so what I found is that they have helped me move this needle. And when I didn't think that we could get the online stood up as fast as we could, they said, yes, we can, and yes, we will. And they did it. You know, I'm the one I'm a traditionalist by all accounts. You know, I want A, B, C, D, F grading scale. It's my faculty who are like, well, you know, we really need pass fail because of X, Y, Z, and I'm pushing against it. So in some instances, when you open up that communication, the faculty don't have to be led into the technology transformation space. Sometimes they will lead the campus into the technology transformation space. They have come up with the lab assistant for virtual labs. They came up with the Inscribe. And so they are helping invent a sustainable online community as we go not just through COVID-19, but into the 21st and 22nd century.
Great. Dr. Becerra, Dr. Ulmer, would you like to talk about some of your biggest barriers to online learning as it stands?
Well, I have to say, I had the same experience as Dr. Brown. At first, I didn't think that we were going to be able to pivot 700 courses to remote education in a matter of days. And again, I was so impressed by the will of our faculty, the sheer will. And like I said before, we did face the fact that it wasn't perfect, but it did the job. And then we're taking it from there, continuous improvement. I do agree with Dr. Brown that the faculty have just an extraordinary capacity. Even when I said, well, how are we going to do the labs? Well, they figure out how to do the labs. Even things, how do you teach interior design, which is like performing, something that is traditionally requires the physical presence. How do we do this in a remote world? And our faculty were incredible in figuring out how to do this and how to do this well. So I think, it's ingenuity, right? The mother of necessity, the mother, not the father. So I think we just need to understand what needs to be done and let the faculty run with it. And they can come up with just extraordinarily elegant and solutions that actually get the job done. So I'm really extraordinarily excited about some of the lessons learned from this pandemic. And one is, I think it has built our confidence about what we can do. And we certainly can do a lot more than we thought we could. And that's exciting.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Wilcox, I know our time is up. But before we black out, I don't know if we're on a set time to you and to Ms. Leiba, I just would like to, on behalf of Kentucky State University, our faculty, staff, and Board of Regents, thank President Ulmer and Walden for hosting this conversation. And I'm certainly humbled to have been a part of it because these are the kinds of conversations that are needed to bridge divides and make sure that we have sustainable higher education opportunities for the nation's youth and adults, as he's reminded us going forward. So I know that I'm over time and I apologize, but I just could not go without thanking my homeboy from South Carolina, Dr. Ulmer, for.
I also want to chime in real quick. Thank you, Dr. Ulmer, for inviting us. We're delighted to be here and enjoyed being with all of you thank you.
Well, we are absolutely honored. And thank you, Mr. Wilcox. I would, thanks to our moderator, Leiba, and our panelists, Dr. Becerra and Dr. Brown, of course. I'm honored to have been in such great company this evening. It was a huge treat for me. And for those of you who may not know, these Talks for Good, this series, is part of Walden's Mobilize for Good initiative. We actually rolled it out before COVID, and so we had to make some changes because we're not mobilizing, but we are mobilizing virtually. So this celebrates our 50-year history. In January of this year, we started celebrating Walden's 50th anniversary of empowering the greater good by recognizing communities around the world and the commitment and their passion for social change. And so in addition to our talks, Walden's giving back to our local schools and our organizations across the country, and that is actually part of our Acts for Good program. So in recognition of National Distance Learning Week, Walden has donated $5,000 to the United Way of Central Maryland under their Bridge the Digital Divide campaign. And so these things we've been talking about tonight, these funds are going to provide much needed Wi-Fi services, technology, training, and so much more to communities in need. And we did this collaboration with United Way on the initiative of our 15th annual Global Days of Service. And so we just want to keep this momentum going. And so if you would like more information on this or any you want to take a look at this important initiative, maybe even make a charitable contribution, you can visit uwcm.org, just like United Way, uwcm.org/WaldenU. So again, thank you for allowing me to be to share some of the time tonight to talk about this. And Liz, I'll give it back to you now.
Oh, I had my mute button on just in case the kids came running in here. So thank you so much, Dr. Ulmer. I really appreciate everything. This has been very inspiring. You've given me a lot to think about. The insights from our panelists have been so valuable, the recommendations and some of the learning lessons that all of us that not only work in the online learning space, but also work with traditional students face-to-face, we can all learn from each other. And I think this is a great lesson, collaboration, and how sometimes if we all come together and just put our heads together, there's so much that we can gather and that we can strategize. And like Dr. Becerra and Dr. Brown both said, and as well Dr. Ulmer, we're all here for the betterment of the students. So being able to have these talks, I thank you once again to Walden for hosting this and for Dr. Ulmer for being such a gracious host to us all tonight. And for our audience, we'd love to hear feedback from you on tonight's panel and gather input on topics you'd like to see covered in future events. So please look out for a survey that you'll see in your email and go ahead and fill that out and send that back in so that Walden can be responsive in providing additional events that may be of interest to you. And thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. We hope you had an insightful evening, and we look forward to having you at future Talks for Good and joining us in more discourse about how to make higher education a better place. Good night, everybody, and thanks again.